My presentation, as you can see on this slide, is on Bach. I wanted to do Bach pieces, and so I looked in the McGraw teaching book, which levels the pieces, and I noticed that all of the level 4 teaching pieces for Bach were all from the notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach. So I decided to just focus on level 4 pieces, which she says there are 7 of them. This is a picture of the actual notebook for Anna Magdalena Bach, the 1725. There are 2 notebooks. There's a 1722 version and a 1725. All of these pieces come out of the 1725. So these are the 7 pieces that McGraw says are level 4. It's the minuet in G major, G minor, they kind of go together, which these are both written now by Petzold, we know. And then minuet in G major, the march in D major, which now we know is C.P.E. Bach, the musette in D major, the movement air, and that one, from the research I looked at, it looks like it's really a child's handwriting, like it was a figured bass with some notation on top of it. And then the last one is the minuet in D minor. I wanted to look at the pieces and then compare the different editions of the Bach pieces. So this first one is the Calmus Classic Edition, this one here and up there. Walter Carroll is the person who compiled the pieces, and then he also edited them and fingered them. This book, The First Lessons of Bach, was the first collection of Bach pieces to be edited that teachers used, and so he really is kind of the grandfather of teaching Bach. He also removed the ornaments that were original Bach ornaments because he thought they were more accessible then to the early students. Because of the success of Book 1, which included 16 pieces, he put together a Book 2, which serves as a link between Book 1 and then moving into the little preludes or the 2-part invention. 6 out of 7 of the pieces that McGraw said were level 4 are included in this book. The second collection of pieces is The First Lessons in Bach, which is an Alfred Masterworks edition. The compilation and the fingering is Mr. Carroll's, but then Willard A. Palmer revised them because Mr. Carroll, way back then, made a few errors. Unfortunately, it's only Book 1, so it only has the 16 pieces in it instead of the 28. Then this is the third book. This one's newer. It's copywritten in 2009. It's a Schirmer edition, and Christos Tsitsaros is the editor. As we can tell from this table of contents, it includes, again, he's staying true to Walter Carroll. He's keeping the pieces in the same order that Mr. Carroll did them, and he's including all 28 of the original pieces from Mr. Carroll. He's got a lot of introduction pages where he talks extensively about why he made his choices. He quotes C.P.E. Bach, he quotes all sorts of historical documents. He gives an overview of the dances, of the French origin, he discusses choosing the correct tempo, the overview of common articulation choices from the period. He says you can play legato, staccato, and portato. And then ornamentation, he goes extensively and gives examples. He talks about trills, the long and the half trill, which nobody else talked about that. And he quotes C.P.E. Bach saying that it was completely acceptable to put a half trill in the place of a full trill in certain circumstances, and especially to make it a little easier for the student. So let's say I'm going to put a trill on E. So you can do a half trill. So you hold the top note just a little bit longer and then you turn. And then he talks about the mordent appoggiatura, the schleifer, which is the slide. And a schleifer would connect that C to the F. Then the last edition that I've looked at was this one. There are no information pages. In fact, it doesn't even tell you who edited the pieces. It only includes 4 out of the 7 level 4 pieces. The first piece we're going to look at is the minuet in G major, which is from the Appendix 114. What I did was I went to the Bach Werk, the actual collection of Bach works, to try to have a baseline piece to look at without edits. From looking at this, there are 4 original mordents, 1 trill, and 1 appoggiatura that Bach actually wrote, or whoever actually wrote into the piece. Tempo marks, dynamics, articulation marks. I just thought it was interesting to see the differences between the different editions. So Carroll's marking is allegretto, and he uses dynamics of piano, mezzo, forte, and swells, and he includes slurs and staccatos. And he says a dotted half is 66, which is quite fast. Then Schirmer, Tsitsaros, the editor, he slows it way down, and he says a quarter note is 104 to 120. The only thing he ever includes are slurs in all of his editions, which is quite interesting to not, the other people are putting staccatos into nudo marks and portato marks and all things, and he just puts slurs. Then the Peters one, they say it's poco allegretto, and they have different dynamic marks and different articulation marks on that too. And then I thought this was interesting, if we can see it. It's just the first phrase, the opening phrase of the different editions, so you can see a little difference. Calmus, of course, the first two, Calmus and Alfred, is going to be basically the same. But if you notice in Calmus, the mordant that is in measure 3 is not there at all, and I've just penciled it in there. In Alfred, the mordant is noted with a circle and an A, and then in the footnotes he says, okay, all A's were original mordants. Then in Schirmer, Mr. Tsitsaros' version, notice that the slur, he decides to take the slur over to be 2 in the second measure, so it's a little different. And he does have the original mordant, plus he tells us what it is right above it, which I think that's very helpful to beginning students, just to, and to the teachers to see it and to know what that is. And then in the Peters edition, it's quite interesting, a little bit different. They separate the first note, which I like. I thought it's very nice. This is what's interesting. Where the mordant is, it's all written out. So it's actually written into the music, kind of the French style. I thought it would be nice to play. I'm going to not play the Carol version with a mistake. I'm going to play the Alfred version, which is Carol's but fixed. No ornaments, a lot of detached in the left hand. Then I thought it would be nice, since Schirmer, since Tsitsaros includes a CD, for you to hear that. Again, the ornaments are notated plus a picture above them. He changes the dynamics at the repeat, which is good. He gives the half trill option. He does notate the true composer as Christian Petzold. And it's over 2 pages, so it is spread out nicely too. So quite a bit slower. And let me go back. He does really cool stuff with it. At first I thought his tempo was so slow, and his choice was kind of boring maybe. But then I listened to his recordings, and I thought, oh, it makes sense. And I actually think that his versions sound more Baroque. Here is the Peters edition version, which again, I think it's quite interesting, the choices that this editor made, whoever that editor may be. And it's poco allegretto. Pros and cons of the different editions. Again, I think having some type of Carol edition is important because he is kind of the grandfather of these pieces, but just know that his isn't the only voice. And if you were to get one of the 2 of these, I would probably get the Alfred's version because it's been corrected. This one I think is definitely the best buy, the Schirmer edition with the CD for $12.99. Having all 28 pieces, and they're beautifully done, and then they really do make sense when you listen to the CD. And the introduction, and he even says in there that this is his, this is not like the definitive how you have to play it, but at least his choices are sound, and he explains why they're sound. And he says you can change them up, but this, at least what I've put down is authentic.